Hello students, welcome you to my MOOCs classroom on resource geography. Today we are going to learn about the classification of resource and its use. In the beginning, we just recapitulate the definition of resource. We have already learned that resource does not refer to a thing or substance, but to a function that a thing or substance may perform or to an operation it may take part attaining given ends such as satisfying human wants. This definition is provided by E.W. Zimmerman. So, resource satisfies individual wants and it attains social objectives. It comes out from the dynamic interaction of man, nature, and culture. A lump of coal is resource not because of its color, its shape or composition or its scarcity, but to its function that satisfying human wants. Therefore, only the satisfaction of human beings converts any substances into resource. Proven reserves of minerals in the midst of inaccessible terrain are not considered as resource because they fail to yield any satisfaction to either society or individual. Like Zimmerman, James Fisher also describes resource are anything that can be used to satisfy need or desire. In simple way, what does resource mean? Resource means by which man's needs and satisfies are fulfilled. Secondly, by which certain objective can be attained. Thirdly, it may be helpful to solve human problem. And fourthly, resource is something by which some social objectives can be attained and upon which human beings are dependent. Therefore, lot of things present in the environment and inside the earth are not considered as resource, and also they may be useless today, but they can become resource in future. That's why it is called resources are not, they become. A resource has some salient features. A thing should have utility. It should have been accessible. It must have capacity to meet some kind of function, ability. It may be tangible or intangible in nature, and it should come out from the dynamic interaction of trio, that is, man, nature, and culture. Resources are found in nature that a human population at any given state of economic development and technological awareness perceives to be necessary and useful to its economic and material well-being. It is obvious to come into mind, why do we classify resources? We classify resources to understand, manage and use them sufficiently and sustainably, enable better planning, development and conserve. Resources ultimately stem from nature, but human technology and institution transform these natural materials into useful products or which we call resource. Therefore, resource embraces a wide range of objects. Some resources are extremely useful from the economic point of view, some resources are not. Many resources are culturally and artistically significant. Even biological waste can be converted into useful resources using technology in today's advanced world. Resources can be classified into different ways. It can be classified on the basis of nature, on the basis of origin, on the basis of exhaustibility, on the basis of development, on the basis of distribution, property, ownership, and so on. On the basis of nature, resources are broadly classified into three types: natural resource, that means the resources which are drawn from nature and used with little or no modifications. Human resource. A nation's most valuable resource is, of course, its population. People with their abilities and demands are responsible for converting nature's boundary into resources. As a result, people who are healthy, educated, motivated generate greater amount of resources to meet their own needs. Thirdly, the cultural resources. Cultural resources are tangible artifacts or sites that hold historical, cultural, and spiritual significance, allowing people directly connect to their past. Cultural resources include both physical assets like archaeology, painting, sculpture, and also intelligible things such as folklore, storytelling, drama. Knowledge, intelligence, skills are also examples of cultural resources. What is natural resource? The answer lies in the word itself. Yes, it is Mother Nature. The word natural comes from nature and resource stands for supply or support to satisfy our needs. So, anything that has been supplied by Mother Nature and can be used by living beings are called natural resources. Natural resources are present in the earth on their own and no much human efforts are required or modifications are needed in their creation. They are used as raw materials for many products and energy. But their sustainable management is absolutely important to avoid depletion and any environmental degradation. The items that we use in daily lives, such as sheet metals, fabrics, electricity, and microchips, are not natural resources but are definitely derived from natural resources. Sometimes tool and technology are applied to use them in the best possible way. Common examples of natural resources include water, forest, coal, mineral oil, mineral, and even sunlight and air. These are must for our development and survival. Now we come to human resource. Human beings are the greatest resource of the nations. Nature's boundary becomes significant only when people find it useful. People with their demand and abilities turn the natural things into resources. John R. Commons, an American economist, in his book The Distribution of Wealth in 1893, first coined the term human resource. Healthy, educated, motivated people develop resource as per their own needs. Man, as both producer and consumer, keep resource creation continued. The Government of India has a Ministry of Human Resource Development, which is known as MHRD, with an aim to improve people's skill. This shows how important people are as a resource for the country's development. Today, HR department in any organization is vital part for business regardless its size. Presence of population ensures labor supply for resource creation. In the densely populated regions of the world like South and Southeast Asia, Europe, Northeastern America, resource creation is ensured by enough human resource supply. While the scanty population regions like tropical deserts, high mountain, deep forest, the resource development is quite low. Cultural resources, knowledge, science, technology, innovations, and applications of all there is satisfying human needs are called cultural resources. Dearth of cultural activism retards resource creation and hinders any economic development. The scale of development in culture involving science and technology determines the extent of progress in the economy and resource. There are still some areas in the globe which are remotely located and inaccessible, lagging behind in cultural development, and that's why very poor and remain backward. For example, we can see the forested region of Congo and Amazon basin. A large number of community living there depend on hunting and collection, nomadic herding, and migratory cultivation. On the other hand, the people living in Europe and North America, by attaining commendable height of cultural development, including massive improvement in science and technology, have achieved an optimum stage of resource development. Cultural resources are both tangible and intangible in nature, reflecting history, traditions, and heritage of a community. So, there are two types of cultural resources: tangible cultural resources, which include building, structure, archaeological sites, cultural landscape like agricultural field, city, and intangible cultural resources, which include traditional living, languages, oral traditions, and religious practices. Cultural resources like telling stories about societies, environment, and cultures are non renewable and are protected by laws. They are important for understanding cultural diffusion, identity, and landscape evolution. Cultural resources also have some economic value, resulting primarily from their associative and aesthetic values. People usually want to visit heritage sites. Tourism is one of the largest industry in the world, and heritage tourism is one of the largest sectors of the industry from which a country like India earn a great revenue. Cultural resources usually studied within the purview of human geography highlight the relationship between human society and spatial environment. On the basis of origin, the resource can be classified into two: abiotic resources and biotic resources. These are two important components of an ecosystem. All the living things are called biotic resources, while all the non living things are called abiotic resources. Both biotic and abiotic resources affect survival and reproduction process. The term biotic consists of two words: bio meaning living organisms and ic meaning similar, collectively known as biotic resources or living organisms. All the living organisms from animal to humans comprise biotic resources. Examples are plants, birds, fish, marine organisms, and human beings. Abiotic resources. These resources comprise larger category of natural resources as they occur in the nature, in the environment, and are produced by humans. These are usually obtained from lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. Examples are air, water, sunlight, soil, and minerals. The interaction between various biotic and abiotic resources are necessary for the reproduction of each species and to fulfill essential requirements like food. For example, in absence of adequate sunlight, autotrophic organism may not be able to survive. When this organism eventually die, it will create a shortage of food among the primary consumers. These affect the food chain up, affecting every organism and ultimately leads to an imbalance in the ecosystem. Based on amount and durability, natural resources are classified into two types: renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Let's look at them in detail. Natural resources that are unlimited in supply and we can use them again and again are called renewable or inexhaustible or flow resources. Renewable resources are renewed for services. Metals can be recycled. What are other renewable resources? Examples include air, water, sunlight. However, in some cases, water is not renewable easily, and once it is polluted, we cannot use them. About 71% available water on the earth, only 2.5% are fresh water, and among them, only 0.3% are available in the surface. At the same time, polluted air also could be hazardous for humans and other living organisms. Therefore, it is important to take measures in order to reduce air pollution. We can again divide the renewable resources into two categories: perpetually renewable resources and intermediate renewable resources. Perpetually natural resources are those resources that are constantly replenished by sun's and earth's natural process. The examples are sunlight, ocean current, wind. Solar and geothermal natural resources presently play a significant percentage of many nations' electrical grids. It is perpetually renewable in the sense that no matter how much we use in terms of human timescales, the sun and earth will always make more. Intermediate renewable resources are only renewable resources if we don't use them too quickly. The resources like fresh water, soil, crops, and trees for the timber are in this category. If we didn't use them, they would be perpetually renewable, but because they require time to generate or to grow, we can overuse them until they are no longer available. Fresh water is a good example in this regard. Through the hydrological cycle, the sun evaporates water from the surface and oceans that travels over the land and falls back to earth as freshwater rain. This rain fills the lake, rivers, pond and aquifers, what we use for agriculture, industry and drinking purpose. If we use this fresh water at the same rate as the rain recharging it, then we won't run out. If we use the fresh water faster than it recharges, it will surely lose. Intermediate resources must be carefully managed to ensure that they are not depleted. Now we move into non-renewable resources. It simply means those natural resources whose supply is limited. Once it is used, it is not grown naturally or do not come back again or take long time to come back. They are also called stock resources. It gives us caution that if we do not preserve them or use them unnecessarily, due to which they might go to extinct once and for all. As human population is increasing day by day and we use natural resources, one day may come in near future when nature is not able to supply us the resources like plant and trees, minerals and fossil fuels. As these resources can exhaust with time, these are called exhaustible natural resources. It should keep in mind that natural resources are vital for human survival. Once these resources are used up, they cannot be replaced, which is a major problem for humanity as we are currently dependent on them to supply most of our energy needs. Approximately 80% of the total amount of energy used globally each year comes from fossil fuel. We depend on fossil fuel because they are energy rich and relatively cheap to process. But a major problem of fossil fuels is that they are limited in supply and burning them release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which are the cause of global warming. Monitoring is absolutely essential. World is now looking for renewable sources of resources because non-renewable sources are extinct in near future. Resources are classified into four types on the basis of their status of development. Number 1, potential resources. Resources which are found in a given area but have not been utilized yet are called potential resources. They are labeled as potential because they can be used but are currently not being used due to some other reasons. Some examples of potential resources are wind energy, solar energy, which are still not widely used. Developed resources. Resources which have been developed and harnessed are developed resources. These resources are currently being used. Common examples of these resources are coal, mineral oil. Number 3 is stock resources. Stock resources are those resources which are present in environment and can be used but not are currently used. They are not used because there is no method to harness or access it yet. An example of stock resources that various chemical and organic compounds found in the environment but human beings still do not have the technology to access them. Fourth is the reserve resources. Reserve resources are those resources which can be used but are currently not in use. This is not because the method of harnessing is unavailable, but it is kept for later use with the help of existing technology. A good example of reserve resource is water in the dam. Developed resources are also called actual resources since they are the only resource used in the present. Potential resources are not currently used because of factors like economic constraint and inaccessibility. Once those are cleared, they are used as developed resources. Stock resources cannot be used because of lack of technology to use them. Renewable resources are also considered reserve resource because they do not get exhausted and are still available for future generations. On the basis of distribution, resource can be grouped into two categories: ubiquitous resources and localized resources. It is fact that resources are not evenly distributed throughout the world. Some regions are rich in resource possession in terms of resource possession, while others are poor. The occurrence of resource in any particular region depends on the geographical factors. Resources that are found everywhere is called ubiquitous resources. Air, land, and water are examples of ubiquitous resource. These are indispensable for human sustenance and ecosystem survival. These resources are almost abundant in all the environment irrespective of its climate and location. Land provides the foundation for habitat construction and agriculture, industry, and all other activities. Water is necessary for life, and air is essential for respiration, otherwise, we could not live. On the other hand, resources that are found in specific place is called localized resource. For example, coal, iron ore. It is not like that coal is dumping everywhere or wherever we go found iron. No, we can found them in a particular place. Such distribution is absolutely depend on topography, climate, altitude and other factors. The difference between ubiquitous resource and localized resource is an important concept while understanding the resources. Ubiquitous resources can be found everywhere, while localized resources can be found in certain places. Resources are also classified into two on the basis of the properties. One is tangible resources, other is intangible resources. The substances which have material existence are called tangible resources. For example, land, vegetation, mineral. The resources which do not have any form is called intangible resources. For example, intelligence, knowledge, efficiency that are primarily belong to cultural resources. According to Mattila, tangible and intangible resources may be classified as operant, that is manufacturing elements, and operant, that is knowledge and information. Capabilities refer to this knowledge and information. Intangible assets have no physical form and frequently exist in people's thought and minds. Both assets and capabilities must be the foundation for long-term planning since they give the principal direction for a company's business strategy and financial success. Tangible resources are more easily valued, measured, and managed compared to intangible resources. Effective management and deployment of tangible resources can lead to improved operational efficiency, productivity, and profitability. Resources are also classified on the basis of right to use or ownership and its spatial dimension. There are four types: individual resources, community resources, national resources, and international resources. Resources that are owned by particular person or an organization is called individual resource. Properties, wealth, honesty, intelligence, knowledge, education, health are the example of individual resource. Resources which have been functioning for the welfare of the community are called community or social resources. For example, educational institutions like school or college, religious institutions, park, road, etc. National resources are those resources owned by country or nation. These resources are common for all citizens in the country and used for community or social purpose. For example, transportation network, minerals, forests. Finally, there are international resources, that is, the resources available for all the people across the world. International institutes are formed that manage of these resources. Any country cannot use these international resources without the permission of international institute. For example, international navigation and aviation routes. Let's sum up. We have discussed the different ways of resource classification based on several criteria. We have come to know the different types of resource that we use every day to make our life easier and more comfortable. But the value of resource depends on its availability, use, and importance in our daily lives. The contribution of human being in resource creation is very important. Iron ore becomes a resource to us only when we, the people, know the technique how to extract iron from the ore. It is available in nature for long many days, but until man is able to know the technique to extract the iron from the ore, it was not considered at all resource. In nature, we find the things in raw form. We change the original form of natural substances. We process them in industry and converted the natural substances into our useful resources. The availability and accessibility of resource have powerful impact on economic development and growth. We have already learned how technology and time can convert something into a useful resource for the sustenance of civilization and human life. If one goes through the important historical inventions and discoveries, he must be able to explain the type of resources and how they are emerged with time. Let's take an example of fossil fuel. These are extracted from the deepest mine. These are nothing but hydrocarbon remnants of the organism dead for millions of years and waiting to be discovered. The discovery and utilization of new resources eventually lead to technological innovation and scientific advancement. The judicious use and management of resource results into environmental conservation and sustainable development.